It's the fourth night since US and Israeli strikes began, and the region is sliding deeper into escalation mode. Overnight brought heavier bombardments inside Iran, new drone and missile incidents across the Gulf and Iraq, fresh evacuation moves, and growing international military deployments. In Tehran, the night was dominated by constant aircraft noise, large explosions, and smoke drifting across the city. Reports from the ground say bombardments was heavier than the first days, with growing concern over civilian casualties. A police station in Inqilab Square was reportedly hit, and more strikes were reported from cities including Isfahan, signaling that the campaign is widening, not slowing. At the same time, Iran's internet has been largely cut off for more than 84 hours, according to net blocks, making it harder to verify damage, casualties, and movement on the ground. Iranian media report that Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, killed over the weekend in a US-Israeli strike, will be buried in Mashhad, the holy city where he was born and where his father is buried in the Imam Reza shrine. No burial date has been announced. Across the Gulf, air defenses stayed busy overnight. Qatar says 2 Iranian ballistic missiles targeted the country. One was intercepted, while another one hit Al-Uttihad Air Base, which hosts US forces. Qatar also announced it had arrested 2 alleged IRGC-linked cells, 10 suspects, accusing them of espionage and sabotage planning. In Dubai, authorities say a drone-related incident near the US consulate caused a fire that was contained quickly, with no injuries reported. UAE officials say the country has sustained more than 1,000 attacks from Iran and insist the UAE has not joined the US, Israel, or allowed its territory, waters, and airspace to be used for attacks. In Iraq, a drone was shot down near Baghdad airport with no reported damage. Over Ibril, journalists reported interceptions with debris causing fires and property damage near the US consulate area. In Bahrain, the military says it has destroyed 74 missiles and 92 drones since Iran began its regional retaliation, calling the strikes on civilian infrastructure a violation of international humanitarian law. Even as missiles fly, diplomatic back channels are still being discussed. Oman's foreign minister, who mediated US-Iran talks before the war, says options are still available, calling for immediate ceasefire and a return to regional diplomacy. He also pushed back on claims Iran posed an imminent threat, arguing progress had been made before the strikes began. Turkey foreign minister, meanwhile, criticized Iran's retaliatory strategy, saying strikes across Arab states without distinction are a dangerous miscalculation that raises the risk for everyone, including Iran itself. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says about 9,000 Americans have evacuated the Middle East since the strikes began.
Implementing our plans to help Americans in the Middle East be able to depart. As of a few minutes ago before I left, 9,000 Americans have been able to leave the region since the start of this war. We have about 1,500 Americans that are requesting assistance with departure. We have identified and continue to identify charter flights, military flight options, and expanded commercial flight options, meaning working with the airlines to send bigger airplanes with more seats, and the combination of those 3 things.
And about 1,600 are still requesting assistance.
As I told you right now, we have about a little over 1,500, maybe closer to 1,600 Americans requesting assistance, and we know that we're going to be able to help them.
He also said US personnel were accounted for after the Dubai drone incident.
As I came in, I also saw the media reports about Dubai's consulate. The last update I had with seconds before getting before these cameras was that a drone unfortunately struck a parking lot adjacent to the Chancellery building and set off a fire.
UAE says tens of thousands of travelers will be repatriated in phases, starting with 17,498 passengers on 60 flights, then expanding to 80 flights per day for more than 27,000 passengers. Israeli outlet Ynet reports hundreds of Israelis are stranded in Dubai, with some criticizing the lack of government arrangements to bring civilians home as the city comes under attack. On the battlefield narrative, both sides escalated their messaging overnight. Israel's military says it disabled about 300 missile launchers since the war began, after more than 1,600 sorties, and also announced a strike on what it described as an underground nuclear-related site near Tehran, where scientists were allegedly working on a key component for an atomic weapon. Iran's Revolutionary Guard meanwhile says it launched the 16th wave of Operation True Promise 4, firing missiles and drones at Israel. And in the middle of the US-Israel's war on Iran over nuclear weapons, IAEA chief Rafael Grossi says there is no evidence Iran is building a nuclear bomb, but warns Iran's stockpile of near weapons-grade uranium and limits on access remains a serious concern. Moving to Washington, US President Donald Trump says in a social media post that the US Navy will be escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible, promising the free flow of energy as oil prices surge on fears of supply distribution. Earlier in a press briefing with German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Trump also claimed that the campaign had successfully knocked out Iran's Air Force and Navy, and said he ordered the strikes because he had a feeling Iran would strike first.
They had a lot of them. They've shot a lot of them, and we're knocking out a lot. I guess the worst case would be we do this, and then somebody takes over who's as bad as the previous person, right? That could happen.
Comments now drawing scrutiny inside the US over the legal basis for an open-ended war. Merz, standing beside Trump, voiced support for stopping Iran's regime, but warned the war is already hurting the global economy through oil and gas prices.
As I said, in Germany the last 2 days, we are supporting the United States and Israel to get rid of this terrible terrorist regime. And we are looking forward to a day after, and we have to talk about the strategy. What is following after this regime is away, and we have to strategize on this entire region. And we are having a high interest in common approach and common work and what we can do, and this is important not just for the Americans.
Europe is also shifting posture. The UK is deploying the destroyer HMS Dragon and helicopters to Cyprus to bolster drone defense, while France is moving its aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle towards Mediterranean and deploying additional air defense and surveillance assets.
Face à cette situation instable, aux incertitudes des jours à venir, j'ai donné ordre que le porte-avions Charles de Gaulle, ses moyens aériens, son escorte de frégates fassent route vers la Méditerranée.
Separately, Spain has refused to let its bases be used for strikes on Iran, prompting Trump to threaten cutting off trade with Spain, a sharp diplomatic and economic escalation within the Western alliance.
But some of the European, like Spain, has been terrible. In fact, I told Scott to cut off all dealings with Spain. Spain, first of all.
So overnight, we saw heavier strikes in Iran, wider spillover across the Gulf and Iraq, more evacuations, and more countries pulling military assets into the region, while Hormuz remains the fuse that could trigger a major global energy shock. We'll keep tracking what changes next.